The meeting is called to order at 4 p.m. I now call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Now we'll have roll call.
Chairman Gary Clark, absent. Vice Chair Elaine Green.
Here.
Board Member Eric Embry, absent. Board Member Herm Latier.
Here.
Board Member Chris Freeling.
Here.
Alternate Board Member Randy Smith.
Here.
Alternate Board Member Robert Wellott, absent.
I now ask for approval of minutes from the October 1st, 2019 Board of Adjustment meeting.
I've read through those and I move to accept them.
Okay.
I'll second.
I need a motion to second it, to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
You'll second it?
Yes, ma'am.
Will you call roll? You already did.
Now I have to do it again. Vice Chair Elaine Green.
Here.
Board Member Herm Latier.
Here.
Board Member Chris Freeling.
Here.
And alternate Board Member Randy Smith.
Here.
Or did you want an eye on that?
That's okay.
Okay.
It'll work.
So we are now open to the public for the hearing. Variance to the front yard setback, 527 Candlewood Drive.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the Board of Adjustment. This evening, or this afternoon, we are here to hear a request for relief from the requirement of a front yard setback in the R2 Medium Density Residential Zone District for property located at 527 Candlewood Drive. The subject property is located on Candlewood Drive between North 5th Street and North 7th Street, as this photograph shows. It is zoned R2, which means, like all R2 properties, there is a 25-foot front yard setback, and it is that setback this particular property owner is seeking relief from. Now, in terms of context and under the zoning requirements, the property is zoned R2 Medium Density Residential. Setbacks in the R2 zone are defined in section 17.12.080D of the Canyon City Municipal Code. A copy of that was included as an exhibit attachment in your staff reports today. In addition to the required side and rear setback requirements for principal and accessory structures, there is also a 25-foot front yard setback measured from the front lot line, which for homes in this neighborhood typically falls at the back edge of the sidewalk along the street. The purpose of building setbacks, and if you go back to the original case in which zoning was defined, in the city of Euclid, Ohio versus the Ambler Realty Company in the 1920s, purpose of zoning is to allow for light and air and a variety or a regularity of form in terms of neighborhoods. So our setback requirements when it comes to front yard are to have that separation, not just in buildings and their separation from one another, but in their separation back from the street to allow for some sort of regularity of front yard appearances. This is why we specify a front yard setback in all of our zone districts, not just R2. Now, in terms of the requirements within the front yard setback, permanent structures for which a building permit would be required to be issued cannot be granted within the front yard setback. The subject property has constructed the principal residence right at approximately the 25-foot front yard setback line, leaving no room for any additional permanent structure. Because of this, staff recently had to deny a request to construct a front porch on this property because as a permanent structure, which would have required a building permit to be issued, it would extrude into the front yard setback by approximately 7 feet, and the zoning code does not allow that. Now, I understand what the applicant is saying. They would like some sort of a relief from the fact that their front door faces to the south, and in the middle of the summer they get the brunt of the light and the heat on their front porch. We recommended to them that awnings would be a structure that's permitted within the front yard setback because you can put an awning up without having to get a building permit. The applicant did not like that alternative and elected to pursue the variance request anyway. Now, section 17.36.040E establishes criteria for evaluating variance requests. These criteria are summarized in the staff report. As the staff report summarizes, the applicant has not provided any evidence of a physical hardship, which can be expressed in terms of an unusual configuration of the property, an unusual shape, unusual topography, an undersized lot for what would otherwise be an R2 zoned lot. None of that is expressed in evidence. Indeed, the letter that we got indicated that this was a typical suburban lot, not unlike any of the others along the street. So we find that there is not grounds for a variance hardship request to be made. Indeed, in its current configuration, the property does currently comply with the R2 zone district, which means that this variance request is effectively the applicant seeking permission to violate the zoning code. We don't believe that that's an appropriate use of the variance process. And then if granted, there would be a knock-on effect in that every other residence in Canyon City, which has a home built right up to its front yard setback, there would be no grounds at that point to deny the allowance for a porch to be constructed, because at that point, the precedent will have already been set with this project if it's granted. So with that, staff is recommending that the Board of Adjustment cite the two findings of fact that are expressed in the staff report as this board certification to have jurisdiction to act on this request in a public hearing context. Staff is also recommending that following a public hearing on this request, not only hear from the applicant, and I believe the applicant's consultant, Mr. Lamone, is here to speak on this project, but also from any concerned citizens who might be here. Staff is recommending that the Board of Adjustment find that the applicant has failed to satisfy the criteria associated with a variance request, and that the requested front yard variance for 527 Candlewood Drive be denied. That would conclude my presentation. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions that the Board of Adjustment members may have. As I said, present to speak on behalf of this application is Mr. Lester Lamone of P3 Communities.
I have a couple of questions, Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
As I went by there, and I didn't get out and measure it, but I didn't determine that that was a 7-foot slab, but it is a 7-foot slab?
Yeah, I thought it
It
was 5
it is a
foot.
7-foot slab, and I should, as I said, you don't need, for any item that does not require a building permit, and concrete flat work does not require the issuance of a building permit, they could certainly do that. If he wanted to tear out his entire front yard and put in concrete, he could certainly do that. That would not require a building permit.
Well, my mind was just working as far as size, because down on 610 across the street,
Mhm.
They have an open porch. Basically, it's an oversized awning, if you will.
Mhm.
It's a roof, but it's totally open. Do we know what size that slab is on, or what size slab that exists on that property?
I believe the front yard concrete slab, basically the sidewalk going up to the front door, is approximately 7 feet in front of the residence.
Do we know why they were allowed to do that?
As I said, concrete flat
Concrete.
work does not trigger a building permit. You can put in the concrete flat work without triggering or being considered to go into a setback with a permanent structure.
Visually, it appeared that they came to the edge of their concrete, but I guess that's my age.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When we talked about awnings, when you mentioned the awnings, I know a lot of them think it's the ones that, protrude outward and just, you roll them back in. Is there anything that you could do to put up a structure on the front of the house to allow a wooden awning to, like a roof type, to come out with maybe a straight post and a angled for support? Is that something that could be
You could.
considered
It would be, if
non-constructional?
it's considered ornamental, in that it is
Right.
not, if it's prefabricated and therefore does not trigger the need for a building permit to be located in space and located in order to facilitate construction of the awning, then yes, you could do that. There is a specific exception written into the code for that. And I believe I quoted the section in the staff report as well.
Okay, that was my question, because I thought, well, it is, you're building something, but you're not bringing it out and using a foundation or supports or anything like that. So-
Right.
A follow-up on that, is there a size defined on what they could do on that?
There isn't a size defined, it's more a function of the engineering of the structure and how big they could make it without triggering, okay, now we have to go under construction and draw up plans. If it's prefabricated, that's fine. If it's large enough that it's gonna require a construction crew to assemble it and mount it and attach it to the house, that would probably be a different matter.
And it said 33 feet long. They're planning on going all the way across that whole front.
I think that's merely the length of the concrete slab in front of the house.
Okay.
I don't believe that was the entirety of the dimension that they wanted to build the front porch to.
Mm-hmm. Aesthetically, I think a front porch is nice, but zoning-wise? Are there any other questions from the staff?
No, not for me.
There's no handicap or any reason for the front porch?
Not that it's
Other
been
than just-
conveyed to us, and typically, single-family residences are not necessarily required to comply with ADA unless you have a homeowner who is, for example, disabled and needs to have handicapped accessible ramps put in. Most single-family homes don't require ADA compliance.
So the porch itself is just, are you just going to have wooden slats, I guess, and a railing around it, and that's,
Well, the proposal that we got was to build an actual porch with a railing around it,
Right.
pillars, and a roof structure that would attach itself to the house.
okay.
That could not be done without the issuance of a building permit.
Right,
And because
so-
that structure extrudes into the front yard setback, I had to deny that building permit request. So the applicant has sought to appeal that decision by coming before the Board of Adjustment.
And putting it in front versus in the back, I guess.
Well, the back, I believe, if you take a look at where the house is situated on the lot, you could put a deck in the back and still have plenty of room without going into a rear yard setback.
Right.
The issue for this particular homeowner is that that doesn't really solve the problem of all of the direct sunlight and heat the front door gets in the summer. He's looking for some relief from that, which is why I had discussed with him the possibility of doing awnings.
Okay.
Are there any comments from the audience? If yes, you will need to approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Madam Vice Chairwoman, my name is Lester Lamone with P3 Communities. I'm the owner's representative. My company is located at 425 Main Street, Suite 1. I'm here to speak on behalf of Mr. Camacho today, who is not in attendance. This is Tristan Ritchie, my office intern. He's here with me today, too. That's me. Thank you for hearing our variance request today. We appreciate it. As Mr. Mulready said, most of our zoning codes are from our foundational legal precedents in the 1920s. That's the majority of zoning requirements for most of the cities in the United States. And we are in the process of even now in this city changing to other zoning codes and types. So there are very regularized standards for R1, R2 zoning, setbacks. I'm an architect, by the way, by trade, so I understand exactly what's at stake today, and I understand exactly why I'm standing in front of you today. Mr. Mulready is exactly correct in that anything that needs to be engineered or built or designed in a way that touches the ground requires a building permit. So that's why we're here with you today. My client, Mr. Camacho, came to me and said, I want to increase the value of my home. I want to decrease the amount of sunlight that gets to my front door. I know that I could build an eyebrow. I know that I could pre-purchase a manufactured structure that does this for me, but just like your houses and just like my house, we like to have a little bit of character, and he has proposed a simple but nice structure for the front of his house that will again shade the front of the house, but it encroaches into the 25-foot setback. He understands that, and he understands that as soon as we touch the ground and we need foundations, we have to have a building permit. So that's not lost on Mr. Camacho at all. But he decided that he would come before you and through me and ask for your permission to be lenient on that. One of the technical aspects for this piece of property is these are all 1980s homes. They're all set right up against their front setbacks. There is no irregularity, which was the purpose of zoning, but I think that it adds to the style of the neighborhood when there is irregularity. I design houses for a living. I have to comply with setbacks too, but in the 1980s, they were putting up boxes as fast as they could, and Candlewood is one of those. Now, you can see that this is between 5th and 7th Street, so there is no 6th Street. He is literally in the middle of a block. To violate it, yes, might cause a variance request that would set precedent, but there are no safety factors in this case. He's not sitting on an intersection where an encroachment into the front yard setback might block views for automobiles or for pedestrians. So there's no safety factor. Sir, you asked about another porch that was built in the neighborhood. It does encroach into the front yard setback. I'm not entirely sure it's legal. I'm not entirely sure that property owner did it with building permits. That happens all the time. It's a problem for the building department. It's a problem for zoning because property owners just tend to do what they want to do. Mr. Camacho is actually coming to you today and saying, hey, I can benefit from this, my house can benefit from this, my property values can benefit from this. I'm not, me encroaching, I'm not causing any safety concern for the neighbors or for any vehicular traffic. What we're doing today is just coming before you and saying, we don't think it's a safety issue. We understand precedent, but that's your job. Your job is, as Board of Zoning Appeals, is to make individual decisions based on individual asks by citizens of Canyon City. And so we want to appeal to you today to allow this variance based on those facts. He does intend, somebody asked the question, what's this thing going to look like? His intention at this point right now is to match his home. So shingle roof, sloped, wood columns, railing. There is no ADA issue with Mr. Camacho. He is retired from the military. He moved himself from eastern Colorado into into Canyon City to be close to his grandchildren while they're still in school.
I have a question. When
Yes.
you talk about the porch, are you talking about putting like a flooring on it, or are you just putting it over top of the concrete, and the concrete is going to be the exact concrete that was there right now?
That's
The windows are really close to the ground,
They-
so I was
they-
curious
they-
how you
they are,
raised
and
it up.
we've been talking about that because I don't think he's thought through all the details, but
Yeah.
I'm an architect, so I can help him with
Right.
that. But no, you're exactly right. The boundaries of the structure will be the existing concrete. So he wants to come from his driveway to his front door, which is the length, and then 7 feet out, which is his concrete slab. Now, the slab itself is only a 4-inch, it's a regular 4-inch slab. It's not going to support what he wants. So we may have to encroach, we may have to remove some to get a foundation in. But if you say 7 feet is the limit, 7 feet's the limit. So we'll cut concrete out so that we can make sure that that post is at 7 feet, because we will have to have foundation. We will have roof load. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from either of you? Comments?
No, I've presented Mr. Camacho's case the best I can. Again, he didn't want to just do it. He wanted to do it right. He's been a builder his whole life. He's retired now. He's a veteran, and he knows how to follow rules. So that's why he came to me and said, is there anything we can do? And I said, we can just ask. And so he has submitted his application, and we're here to just ask.
I have
Are there
no
any?
further questions, but I would like to make a motion.
Okay.
Unless anybody else has any questions.
I was going to say, is there any other questions on the staff that would like to say anything? Anything from you, Randy?
Not much, except I appreciate Mr. Camacho coming in and applying for this. However, like you said, it tries to set a precedence for everybody else on these blocks. And has he talked to the neighbors about this? And even though these, the request seems it's legitimate and it would benefit his home, I'm just not sure if this is the time to do this, I guess. Like I said, I want to be rural-minded, and I'm just not sure if this is the right time to do this, in my personal opinion.
I had the same thought because I was wondering if maybe your client would be willing to compromise or change a little here and there, or maybe.
Well, if I can address Commissioner Smith's comments. He has spoken to his neighbors, his immediate neighbors, and they don't have any issues with it. I know from sitting in the chair seat for 10 years, not here, but in a different jurisdiction, that these things come to us all the time. I have some, and again, being an architect, I have a lot of experience working within these boundaries when I design, both at the commercial and residential level. A 25-foot setback is a large setback. It is a suburban setback. We have plenty of neighborhoods in Canyon City today that are at 10 and 15-foot setbacks. And we also have development codes written for specific PUDs and PDDs that allow a principal structure to be at 25, for example, but the porch can encroach up to 10 and 15 feet. So it's not precedent in terms of this is the rule. It is a rule. And
Right.
in this particular instance, 25 feet is what this neighborhood was developed with. And we certainly understand that.
Right.
But there are plenty of neighborhoods you drive around in Canyon City that are 10 and 15 feet setback, and sometimes the principal structure and the porch have different setbacks depending on the development guide as it's written. So you should take that into consideration.
I'm taking into consideration also, there's no hardship, there's no handicap act, I mean, there's no reason for that, other than just to build a structure that is cosmetically appealing for a potential sale down the road. Again, I'm worried about, these are the rules that we set for this particular neighborhood, which is 25 feet. I understand maybe there might be 5, 10 in other neighborhoods, but he chose this neighborhood with that setback in mind. So, I mean, that,
No,
again.
and not to be argumentative, I totally understand that. But how many homeowners check on their setbacks before they purchase the home?
And again, I appreciate that. I'm just,
Yep. No, I
again, these are
understand.
the building rules.
Yep,
And
I understand, sir. Like
I
I
think
said,
really-
this is an ask.
Really, the only hardship you could kind of justify is the southern aspect, that more sunlight creates
More.
higher costs to heat, to cool a home, which puts more strain on natural resources if you really want to stretch it. But I think that produces the possibility of a precedent of saying, well, everybody with a southern facing home then gets to violate the setback or, have a different rule, and that doesn't really seem practical. But this is an open porch.
Yes, this would not be an enclosed porch.
And I think it's also interesting because you said that, we said it was 7 feet, but if you have to stop it at 7 feet, you will. If you have to build it out past 7 feet, you could do that. Well, we didn't say 7 feet. He applied for 7 feet.
That's correct.
And I think
That's
that's
our
really
ask.
what's at the heart of the issue is if it's, okay, 7 feet, but where does that 7 feet stop? Or when does it become 8 feet or 10 feet, or somebody building that front porch all the way into the, all the way out to the curb because it's, aesthetically pleasing or something like that.
Agreed,
So,
agreed. This is an ask,
yeah.
so we understand that we're the ones asking for the 7. If there was a variance granted and it was something less than 7, then that would be our, that's what we would have to build to. So, again, I deal with rules all day long. I have code book after code book after code book, so I understand.
Are there any additional comments from the audience, the staff? None? Well, then I ask that we close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion of the Board of Adjustments?
I'll just make a motion when the time is right.
Are we asking for a motion to continue this, or are we voting on this?
Make a motion to vote on it.
Yes, the staff would recommend that you make 2 motions, one which cites findings of fact for the Board of Adjustment to in fact conduct the public hearing and decide the matter. And then the second would be the vote on whether thumbs up or thumbs down you wish to grant or deny this request.
Well, then I make a motion that we vote on this. Do we have a second?
Second?
Cindy, will you
Do
call?
they have to state?
We have to do the findings of fact first?
I would recommend that you
Yeah.
do the findings of fact first. And there
Can
are
I-
2 on page 5 of the staff report.
Right there was his suggested motions.
You want to read that?
Yeah, I can read that. I move that the Board of Adjustment adopt the 2 findings of fact as justification for the city of Kenyon City to conduct a public hearing on this variance request.
A second.
And then the second one.
Yeah, I got a second. She seconded, so. Vice Chair Lane Green,
Yes.
Board Member Herm Latier,
Aye.
Board Member Chris Freeling,
Aye.
Alternate Board Member Randy Smith.
No.
Now we go into a vote for the request, correct, Patrick?
Correct.
Do you have to have a motion and a second on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me go ahead and make the move. I move the Board of Adjustment find that the applicant has failed to satisfy the criteria for the variance as defined in section 17.36.040, parentheses E, and therefore deny the variance request regarding allowance of the front porch to be constructed within the front yard setback at 527 Candlewood Drive.
Second?
Vice Chair Lane Green,
No.
I gotta figure out how do we,
If you're voting yes, it means you are supporting the motion for denial. If you're voting no, it means that you wish to overturn the motion for denial, if that clarifies it.
That clarified it.
Board Member Herm Latier,
Aye.
Board Member Chris Freeling,
tough first day, huh?
I mean, nay.
Alternate Board Member Randy Smith.
Aye.
So we have a tie.
Yes, sir.
Where does it go from there, then?
Well,
I was like, this is something new for me.
it's kind of new for me, too. Normally, when we have a tie situation, well, the chair would tend to break it, yes.
And we don't have our chair here.
We don't have a regular chair here. We can continue this to your next meeting.
I was gonna say, can we table it until we have at least 5, and maybe this give you a chance to bring more evidence or something, or?
I'd like to table it.
We can table it until your April regular meeting if you'd like.
So do we need to have a motion to table it?
We
correct?
would need a motion from the board to table this to, I believe your next meeting is, did I write that down?
April 1st?
Is it April
Or no,
1st?
sorry, that's
Fool's Day.
Wednesday. That's Wednesday, so it'd be
April
next
6th?
6th. No, 7th.
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 It's the 7th.
I make a motion to table this until April 7th, our
Okay.
next meeting.
Okay.
Seconded.
Okay. Vice Chair Lane Green,
Yes.
Board Member Herm Latier,
Nay.
Board Member Chris Freeling,
Aye.
Alternate Board Member Randy Smith.
Now, if I say nay, what does that do?
That tie.
Then we tie it again.
It ties it again.
Well, we're not gonna get any further if we table it again, right?
No, we just want to go to the next meeting and,
Right, if we table it,
Discuss
we'll
it.
go to the next meeting, so what does, if I vote nay, what does that tie do? That does nothing, we're in limbo
we're
again.
not going to the next meeting then.
But we'd have to rectify it now.
You wanted to go to the next meeting, so why don't you say yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Isn't that what we wanted to do, right? Go to the next meeting.
Right.
It gives all of us a chance to really think about this because, it's a situation.
The other thing you can do procedurally is you can open up another motion and have more discussion. Now, you can do that at your next meeting with more board members, or you can do it here amongst yourselves today. So yes, you had a motion fail, but there would be another motion introduced with more discussion.
Madam Chairman, I would recommend that at this point, having not only made a motion that failed because it had neither a majority nor a minority vote, it was a tie. And now that we have voted to continue the matter on a majority vote to your April 7th regular meeting, I would recommend that probably the thing to do is I will send out some emails to make sure that we have more people in attendance from the board so that perhaps we don't end up with the possibility of a tie vote next time around.
Absolutely.
I think that would be the best course of action at this time.
Then I say we do that. We send out emails, make sure all the other people are here and we're not left hanging.
Do you want to hold off on the other?
The other item on your agenda is the selection of chair and vice chair, and I would recommend that since we are so few this evening, it might be wise to put that off to your April 7th meeting as well, in the hope that we could get more attendance.
I make a motion to put that off until after the April 7th meeting.
Second.
Vice Chair Lane Green,
Yes.
Board Member Herm Latier,
Yes.
Board Member Chris Freeling,
Yes.
Alternate Board Member Randy Smith.
Aye.
And that would be the end of the agenda, so I believe we can adjourn, if you'd like.
We are now adjourned.